Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today we'll be discussing how to get out of gold. This is going to be very similar to how to get out of silver video that I did earlier. I'll be using some of that expertise and some of the advice I've given and some of the stuff I've learned from watching hundreds of VOD reviews, and I'll give that to you guys here in this video. Hopefully the things you need to hear that maybe you're not thinking about always, especially in and around this rank. Now, I know I say gold, but this probably can apply to both the ranks right next to it, silver and platinum, of course. And with that being said, before we start the video, I would like to make an announcement. I have officially partnered with GameLeap. If you don't know what GameLeap is, they provide videos and courses for Valorant, as well as all sorts of other games like Dota, Overwatch, and League. Their style of content and their videos very, very similar to mine in the educational format, the approach they take. But they take more of a courses approach. So you actually go into these courses, and they have a whole bunch of videos in there. Really, really nice format. They're a little more polished and edited, of course. You know, I'm a one-man army over here. But since I've started offering professional coaching, I've been looking for ways to sort of discount that price so more of you guys can get involved because it's not that cheap. Well, when you sign up for a GameLeap subscription using code Dragonmar, I can give you up to $20 off your first coaching session with me, depending on which subscription you purchase. And what's great about this partnership is that you get these hundreds of hours of GameLeap content when you subscribe. Then you can use these discounted coaching sessions to go over anything that came up or any questions you had in the videos themselves. And if you're unsure or unfamiliar with GameLeap and you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm really gonna like it, well, they have tons of free content on there, tons of free videos, and on their YouTube. Check it out, see if it's something you would like. And if not, that's totally fine as well. I'm still making my own content, still doing my own streams, still doing my own thing over here, guys. So no worries there. With that being said, hopefully you guys head over to GameLeap.com/Dragonmar. Go take a look around, and see what you guys think. And with that being said, let's start the video. All right, so the first mistake I want to talk about is a very simple one, and it is playing alone. This happens a lot in gold, and I think part of the problem is that there is still a lack of communication in some games. And what ends up happening is players will kind of all do their own thing, and this generally tends to a very sort of like discombobulated kind of unorganized team. Now, the solution or kind of the workaround to especially if nobody's talking, is to kind of pair yourself up, especially to a duelist. A lot of the times what you can do is you can run around with one of your duelists and support them and use your abilities to help them take map control, take sites, and clear areas. And by being there, you also sort of get that sort of that teamwork and being able to trade as well. And a lot of people don't do this, right? They'll just continue to play alone. They'll do their own thing. And I think it's really simple, look for one of your duelists on your team if you're not playing one and pair up with them, because one of the most important things in a game like Valorant is to play together and play as a team. So obviously, do your best to communicate, but if that's not working, I say personally, pair up with one person and play around them. I think this is some really good advice to help people who constantly come to me and say, hey, like, my teams never talk, no one plays together. Well, okay, are you also contributing to that? Like, are you still playing alone as well? Have you tried playing off your teammates? Because you can still make plays even when nobody's talking. All right, mistake number 2 is entering without abilities. This is a big problem for this rank and this range of ranks, because what you actually see a lot is people who kind of understand timing and understand how to enter into sites and like what they need to do themselves, but a lot of the times they won't use their utility properly or their abilities properly to clear out sites or to get the advantage they need to be able to get in. And what happens is a lot of times they really run in dry, and this is kind of a big problem. Now, one of the few people who generally don't struggle with this is Omens, because obviously smoking is super simple, but a lot of other people will not use their abilities when entering sites, and it always confuses me. You'll have the Jets who won't dash in. You'll have, Cyphers who won't throw a cage or who won't use their camera. You'll have Sovas who will forget to recon, back sight and stuff. Like, every agent in the game has, pretty much every agent has some ability that can be used when you're taking a site. I would almost always recommend using something. One of the biggest problems is that when you don't use any abilities, yes, you kind of have an element of surprise, but it enables the enemy, potentially to be able to use one ability and completely catch you off guard, because you won't even know where they're coming from a lot of the time. So if you're taking like C long on Haven and you don't think anyone's back plat, but you didn't nade it or anything. You didn't nade it, you didn't smoke it off, so someone could just be sitting there. Well, if that guy flashes and he flashes your entire team pushing up long, chances are he's going to get a few kills there. Now, had you smoked them off, had you mollied, had you naded that area, good chance you force him out and you take a fight with him earlier. Yes, you give away your position, but it's really a poor choice, I think, to be consistently taking sites without using your abilities, and this is a big mistake. A lot of people forget this. You'd be surprised how often you see this in gold, but yeah, using your abilities when entering is incredibly important, especially if you're an agent like a duelist with flashes. You should always be flashing into entry just to play it safe, and because what's the point in not using your abilities? If you die in the round, you don't get to use them anyways. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely make sure you're using them. Super simple fix there. Now, I've talked about this one a lot. Mistake number 3 is rotating early. Early rotations happen a lot. And part of the problem is you see enemies on your map and you think, oh my gosh, my team needs help. Or a teammate dies and you're like, oh, I better go over there. They're taking that site. However, generally what ends up happening is your whole team runs over there. The enemies are then suddenly planting at the opposite site across the map. Now, how do we deal with over-rotating? How do we deal with early rotations? Well, fixing this problem is a little more complex because it's going to require us to get a little bit of sort of game sense down, a little map knowledge and understanding timing. So first and foremost, I kind of want to start off by saying, if you want to rotate across the map, generally what you want to do is you want to slide over. So on a map like Haven, where there are 3 bomb sites, you generally have 1 to 2 people on A, 1 to 2 people in mid, if not both on A, then 1 garage and 1 on C. So what you would do if a player dies C is you would slide your garage player over to C, you would slide a mid player over into garage, you would then keep your other mid player in mid, and your A player would stay on A, right? You slide over, so everyone is still covering something, and no position is left completely open. Now, the problem is generally that doesn't happen. Generally, 2 mid players and the garage player will go C. The A player then has to figure out if they want to anchor or if they want to go on to B. And it just ends up being a mess because now suddenly the enemy team can take sites either in like a 4v1 or even just completely taking it for free. So my suggestion is if you cannot slide over 1-to-1 like I was just talking, look for how many enemies were spotted on the map before you rotate. If you only see 1 person and the person who died only calls out 1 person, I would say don't rotate. Now, if there is 2 or more people, I think that's when you want to start thinking about rotating. But anytime you see 3 or more, I think personally, unless you're anchoring a site and specifically doing that because the enemy has proven that they like to, rotate back around or something, or do fakes, I think 3 or more players, 3 or more enemies is enough reason to start your rotation. But if you only see 1 person on the map and nobody is calling for your rotate, I would say stay away from it, because generally that's when you fall into that over rotating. That's when you fall into the problem of leaving sites open. So slide over, and if you can't slide over, look to see how many enemies and then make your decision off that. Now remember, this isn't going to work every time. It's just a general rule of thumb that I've tried to use because I still struggle with rotating early as well. All right, so mistake number 4 is not establishing map control. This is a big one. This is when you get into those big brain, those higher level tactics. So first and foremost, what is map control? I haven't talked about this a lot on the channel. It is a more advanced concept because it just requires you to understand like the value of space, if that makes sense. So map control is essentially what part of the map do I and do my team, or does my team have control of with, either our physical bodies or our utility or our vision. And then vice versa, same for the enemy. What do they control? Now, most of the times it's obvious. Defense will almost always control the sites, and then the attackers will, control their side of the map. And then that is where it starts, right? That's the round start. After that, you use your abilities, you use your movement to establish more control. Maybe you take mid, but you give up control of like, long A or something on a map or whatever, right? Or maybe you go take long, but you give up control of mid, and now they smoke off a window in Haven, for example. You're attacking and they smoke your window. They have control of mid now, but you've already pushed up long A. So you have control of long A. Now you just have to take site. Map control is very important. And the reason map control is important is first and foremost for information. So what ends up happening is teams get surprised a lot. Players get surprised, like, oh, I didn't expect a guy to be there. No, neither did I. Well, part of the reason why you don't expect people to be there is because you didn't have any utility or any abilities that could have let you know. You didn't have a player covering it. So getting flanked often is a big problem because people do not establish map control. On Haven, you always see people getting flanked. Well, throwing trips down is an example of establishing map control. Now, you're not establishing with a physical presence, but having those abilities there will let you know if a player is coming, thus giving you control at least and giving you the knowledge that, hey, no one is behind us yet, until they break, of course. So the easiest way to establish this obviously is with utility, keeping things up like turrets, like trips, like cameras, using your recon bolt, using any information gathering utility to sort of find where the enemies are is the easiest way to establish map control. After that, defaulting, holding lanes and things of that nature, not allowing the enemy team to get too aggressive on you is another great way to establish map control. And then finally, taking mid. If you guys can take mid control on these maps consistently, you force the enemies to play back. Whether they're on defense or they're attacking, you force them into these uncomfortable situations where you can kind of run around wherever you want, attack however you want, because they can't push up, they can't get that crazy info, and they can't get the flanks. And I think personally the best way to do this is by using smokes. That's why I love playing Omen. I think smokes are probably the best way to establish map control. And then after that, you have your abilities like, recon bolt, the sky dog, or the Sova drone, right? I mean, all of those are great for establishing map control, but big problem with this rank, man. People do not do it enough. Mistake number 5 is incorrectly planting the spike. So let's talk. I made a video about this recently, actually. Part of the problem here is when you plant the spike, you want to think of a few things, right? You want to think, okay, am I safe? If so, proceed. If not, make sure you're safe. You never want to die just to plant the spike generally, unless time is running out. So always make sure you can get the plant down safely. Generally, sites should be cleared before planting. When it's not cleared before planting, something else is happening. So obviously, there's generally a reason for that. If not, you guys are doing something wrong. Now, when you're planting the spike, you want to think of another thing, and that is, where are we playing post-plant? So post-plant obviously refers to after you've planted the spike, where are you going to stand? How are you going to defend the defuse? And do you have, you guessed it, vision? So vision is very important here. You want your line of sight to be into, or to be able to see the spike, essentially, and in particular, the diffuser. You want to see the guy diffusing the spike. So what happens is people get too worried when they're planting the spike, and they'll kind of just plant it wherever as quickly as they can just to get it down. They want to get back to shooting people. I don't blame them. However, if you take that extra second to run a little bit to your left or a little to your right and put that spike down perfectly on the site, making sure that your team is going to be able to see it from all of the post-plant angles, that is when the magic happens. That is when it is so difficult as a defender to come in and defuse, because now they have to look at all of these different post-plant spots to figure out where the person could be, or where multiple people could be, right, in a better situation. So it is so frustrating seeing people run into a site, plant the spike poorly, and then lose the round because their man advantage cannot be used, because now they have to run into check to see if the spike is being diffused every time instead of just quickly jiggle peeking a corner. So remember, guys, when you're planting the spike, always plant for post plant. Mistake number 6 is about a repetitive strat or repetitive play style. One of the things that's really important in a game like Valorant is to be unpredictable. And if you cannot be unpredictable, you end up just giving the enemy an advantage in every single round you play. If you are consistently going to the same exact spot every single round, and especially when you're not winning in that spot, I just don't see the value in continuing to do it. So this is something you see a lot around this rank range, where people will understand kind of a strategy or a position, and then that's all they really will do throughout the rest of the game, is they'll continuously go mid, or they'll continuously go A long, hold the same angle, the same position every round, whether it works or not. And this sort of this cycle needs to be broken, because switching things up is really important for how you can sort of force the enemy into bad positions. So if you're on attack and you're consistently pressuring B, eventually the enemy team is probably going to send one extra person over to B. But by doing that, they then weaken their defenses in other positions. So if you can take advantage of that and send your players, do a fake on B, have a guy over there holding them up, and have your other 4 players attack the other site, well, then suddenly you've got a huge advantage. Now, the problem here is that what ends up happening is, instead of doing that, you just keep taking B, and then you fight a harder and harder force there, and now you're losing rounds. And this happens all the time. And then eventually you're like, okay, never mind, let's just rush A. But the problem with rushing A is you're going to make so much noise, the enemy team is going to know exactly what you're doing. With any utility, they might be able to slow you down, the rotations might be quick enough. So that's why it's so important to not just have this sort of one strat or one playstyle mindset, and be able to switch things up as you go. So what's really important here to remember, and sort of the way to fix this, is to think, okay, how have the enemy team been playing? What have we been doing? And have we been doing the same thing over and over? And how can we change it? Essentially thinking of, okay, if we've done this many times, what haven't we tried yet? And then trying it. And also learning how to do fakes is another good one. Particularly if you have pressured the same site a lot, like if you have been going A 4 rounds in a row, sometimes what you can do is you can send one person to A, have them make some noise, and then send everyone else to the other site. And generally that comes with a good result as well. But remember, guys, if you find yourself doing the same strat or playing the exact same way each round and it's not working, you really got to think inward there and try to change things up and switch the way you're playing. Mistake number 7 is instantly crouching when you're shooting. This is a bad habit. This gets you guys in a lot more trouble than you realize. The biggest problem with instantly crouching is not that crouching is bad inherently. It's that when you do it all the time, you would tend to do it a lot at long range. And when you're fighting long range, those are the times when you crouch, you make your hitbox much smaller. But remember, your head does not change in size. So what ends up happening is your head is a larger portion of what the enemy can see. And because it's already kind of down at like your chest level where a lot of people aim regardless, you end up just crouching into a lot of headshots at long range, when in reality, staying up higher may have actually been better. So this is something that you want to get out of the sort of bad habit of doing. Also, instantly crouching will sometimes throw people's sprays off as well, even close range. What ends up happening is the second they see someone, they crouch, and sometimes their crosshair doesn't adjust properly. So instead of, they might be lined up for the headshot, but the crouch actually brings their crosshair down, and they end up just shooting the chest, and they'll die. And I always tell them, I'm like, hey, like, did you instantly crouch there? And like, oh yeah, I did. And, bada bing, bada boom, that was the problem. So just, a little tip here, guys, try to stay away from this. Fixing it is pretty simple. Just remind yourself, especially at range, to stay standing up and instead use strafes to dodge and sort of protect yourself and be unpredictable instead of crouching. All right, mistake number 8 is going to be short and sweet, boys. It's not calling out sound cues. So remember, in this game, sound cues are very important. Whether you hear someone make a step, someone drop from, a height, someone use an ability to get up top on something, maybe the spike drops as well. Maybe you hear somebody use like their tablet on Brimstone or something. Whatever you hear, I love when people call it out. In gold, that doesn't happen very much. So be the change you want to see. Be the people calling out these sound cues, because the chances are your teammates are not hearing them, especially if they're not that close to you. If someone's across the map and you can call out that a Brimstone's on your site, that lets them know that they don't have to worry about smokes on their site if they're across the map, right? They might not know Brim is over there. They might think he's playing on their site. So very, very important that even if it's not that big to you, it might really help your teammates make better plays and better decisions. So guys, always call out sound cues, because remember, not everyone can hear them. And when everyone on your team is on the same page, that's when the games go better, and that's when you win more games. All right, mistake number 9 is carrying on the wrong agent. So this is kind of a weird one to talk about, but I think it's really important that everybody understands what what carrying looks like and sort of the best options for it. So in my opinion, what ends up happening is you'll get a lot of people in solo queue, and especially around gold, who do solo queue, who want to be the carrier. They want to be the difference maker on the team. The problem is the agents they're playing. And I know some of you guys are going to fall into this category. So first of all, sorry for calling you out here. But if you think you're going to carry games on Sage and like on even Sova or Breach consistently, chances are, if you're able to carry with those agents, you deserve a much higher rank. More realistically, you want to be looking at things like duelists like Phoenix, duelists like Reyna, who have these really, really nice abilities, whether it's being able to heal yourself, being able to use flashes, things like that. Those are generally what will help you carry the most. But when I see people lock in a Sage or lock in like a Killjoy, and then they have like 8 kills, on defense, and then they get like 3 kills on attack, I'm like, oh, you were gonna carry. You know what I mean? It's just, it's kind of like, oh, well, like, why not try to be, the more aggressive agents? Because remember, guys, you can carry with Sentinels. You can carry with Cypher. It does happen. The problem is that because of the way these agents play, the enemy team has to push into you more often, especially on defense. That's where Sentinels thrive. But on attack, they tend to be a little bit more, how do I say this, useless. And obviously not completely useless. They do have value. I'm just joking. But when you think about it, what's the best agent to be used on both attack and defense? In my opinion, it's any agent with a flash, and in particular, I like my duelist for that more than I like a breach or a sky or something. So that is why when I see people trying to carry, oftentimes they're failing, not just because maybe they're not playing the best, but also because the agent they're playing doesn't allow them or doesn't sort of give them the right toolkit to be able to carry when the duelists are just designed that way. So my advice is, if you're looking to carry, definitely look into playing a duelist. And try to stay away from sentinels in particular, because, you know, if you guys find yourself losing a lot of attack rounds and you're playing a sentinel, honestly, might be time for a change and see if you playing a different role could help you win more on attack. But yeah, definitely something to consider. And I know a lot of people do this, so I apologize. But hey, really think about changing up the agents, especially if you want to carry. In my opinion, the two best carry agents are Reyna and Phoenix. And finally, mistake number 10 is using abilities too late into the round. So this is one of those weird ones where I think that, you know, kind of coming off of mistake number 2, which was entering without abilities, you kind of see this where people do not want to use an ability in favor of using it later in the round. And once again, it all comes down to the idea that, like, if you don't use your abilities and then you die, you have no opportunity to use the ability. So, you know, that's kind of how I've started to have to look at it, right? That's why I'm always cycling my smokes and making sure I'm never holding on to 2 smokes with Omen, because I know if I don't use this ability and I die, my team doesn't get it anyways. So why not try to use it where it can be helpful rather than hold on to it? And I think a lot of people got to get that into their heads. Things like Sage slows, you see people hold on to those all the time. Sova drones, people hang on to those all the time. You know, breach flashes, for some reason he's never flashing except for if he's flashing you. Things of that nature where it's like, hey, you could use this now, or you could use it later in the round for a big play. And a lot of the times what happens is people will always opt into the big play, and then the big play never happens, or they die and they never use their utility, and you see them just carrying utility from round to round to round, and you're like, hey, that really could have been useful this round, or hey, you really should have used your ult here. It goes for ults as well, by the way, guys. Don't hold on to your ult the entire game. Try to make a play with it. Use it as quickly as you can. That way you can get it back. A lot of times people sit on it and look for the perfect opportunity. This was a big problem in Overwatch, where people would always hold on to their ults and try to use the perfect, you know, nano blade or the perfect, Reinhardt shatter or whatever. But in reality, same thing happens in Valorant. Everyone looks for the perfect ult. Don't. Get what you can take and then go again. All right, guys, that is going to conclude the 10 huge problems in gold and how to fix them. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more. I will be live on stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Hope to see you guys on Twitch. It has been awesome lately. Thanks for showing up, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy and peace.